A worn-out pickup truck rolled into the tiny repair shop with smoke curling from beneath its hood, and everyone expected the poor single-dad mechanic to demand payment he desperately needed. Instead, before the frightened elderly woman could even reach for her purse, he quietly closed her trembling hand around it and said she should save her money for groceries because no one deserved to be stranded. He had no idea that before the sun set, one unexpected phone call would shake his entire life, uncover a painful truth, and offer him the second chance he had stopped believing could ever exist. If you believe kindness always finds its way back, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment about what kindness means to you, share this story with someone who could use a little hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us the world is still full of compassion. Every morning, before the first customer arrived, Garrett Holloway unlocked the faded blue doors of Holloway Auto Repair just after sunrise. The little garage stood beside an old gas station on the edge of a quiet American town where everyone knew everyone else's struggles. The building was weathered, the sign had chipped paint, and the waiting room held mismatched chairs collected from garage sales over the years. Yet despite its appearance, people trusted Garrett because he never fixed what wasn't broken and never charged for repairs that weren't necessary. Honesty had become his greatest advertisement, even if it never made him wealthy. Life had changed completely 5 years earlier when his wife, Meredith, lost her battle with a sudden illness, leaving Garrett alone to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Clara. Since then, every dollar mattered. He balanced repair invoices with school lunches, overdue utility bills, second-hand clothes, and medical insurance that seemed to grow more expensive every year. Some evenings he skipped dinner so Clara would never realize there wasn't enough food for both of them. She believed her father simply wasn't hungry, and he never corrected her because protecting her childhood mattered more than satisfying his own hunger. Despite the hardship, Garrett carried himself with quiet dignity. He greeted every customer with patience, listened carefully before touching a single wrench, and never allowed bitterness to settle into his heart. The townspeople admired him, although admiration did not always pay the electric bill. That bright afternoon, while Clara colored pictures at a small desk inside the office during summer vacation, an aging silver sedan limped into the parking lot. Steam drifted from beneath the hood. Behind the wheel sat an elderly woman with neatly combed white hair, a simple floral dress, and worried eyes that reflected exhaustion more than fear. She slowly stepped from the vehicle, apologizing before she even spoke about the problem. She explained that she had been driving home from a doctor's appointment when the temperature gauge climbed into the red. She admitted she had only enough money for fuel and medicine until her pension arrived the following week. Garrett opened the hood and immediately spotted the issue. A cracked radiator hose had emptied the cooling system. It was an inexpensive repair, but replacing the coolant and pressure testing everything would still require parts and labor. He quietly looked toward the woman's faded handbag, noticing how carefully she held it against her chest, as though every dollar inside carried enormous importance. Without hesitation, Garrett retrieved a replacement hose from a shelf, installed it, flushed the cooling system, and checked every connection. He even inspected the brakes and tires before lowering the hood. When the elderly woman asked how much she owed, Garrett smiled gently and shook his head. He simply told her that everyone deserved one good day, and if she ever found someone else in trouble, she could help them instead. That would be payment enough. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She thanked him repeatedly, explaining that very few people showed kindness without expecting something in return anymore. Before leaving, she introduced herself as Eleanor Whitmore and carefully wrote Garrett's name on a small notepad, promising she would never forget what he had done. Garrett watched her drive away safely before returning to another repair job, never imagining the encounter would matter beyond that afternoon. The next day unfolded like every other. Oil changes, brake inspections, tire replacements, and endless paperwork filled the hours. Around lunchtime, Garrett's aging cell phone rang from the workbench. The number displayed no familiar name. Assuming it was another customer asking for an estimate, he answered while wiping grease from his hands. A calm, professional woman's voice introduced herself as Victoria Whitmore. She explained that she was Eleanor Whitmore's daughter. Garrett immediately smiled, relieved to hear the elderly woman had made it home safely. Then Victoria said something that made him freeze. She explained that her mother had told her everything. Garrett politely insisted there was nothing remarkable about fixing an elderly woman's car. Victoria responded by saying that perhaps not everyone thought it remarkable, but she certainly did. She invited Garrett to meet her that afternoon because she wanted to personally thank the man who had restored her mother's faith in humanity. Garrett almost declined. His work schedule was full. He had grease on his clothes. He owned only one decent shirt. Most importantly, he felt uncomfortable accepting praise for something he believed anyone should have done. Still, curiosity eventually persuaded him. After closing the shop for an hour, Garrett borrowed a clean button-down shirt from his neighbor and drove across town. He arrived at an impressive glass office tower unlike anything he had ever entered. Employees hurried through polished marble hallways while security guards greeted visitors with practiced professionalism. Garrett felt painfully out of place. His boots were clean but worn. His pickup truck looked ancient beside luxury vehicles parked outside. When Victoria stepped into the lobby, he immediately recognized Eleanor's eyes. She carried herself with confidence earned through years of leadership, yet warmth softened her professional appearance. Victoria was the chief executive officer of one of the region's largest engineering companies. Despite overseeing hundreds of employees, she welcomed Garrett not as someone beneath her but as someone deserving genuine respect. She explained that her mother had refused roadside assistance because she feared expensive repair bills. Eleanor had spent years living modestly even after Victoria became successful because she believed independence gave life meaning. Victoria admitted something else. Her company maintained an employee assistance fund, donated generously to charities, and sponsored community programs. Yet hearing about Garrett's quiet act of kindness had made her realize that compassion was sometimes strongest where resources were smallest. She asked Garrett why he had refused payment when he clearly needed it himself. Garrett answered honestly. He said he looked at her mother and saw someone who reminded him of his late wife's mother, someone who would never ask for help unless there was no other choice. He added that if Clara were ever stranded years from now, he hoped someone would choose kindness over profit. Victoria remained silent for several moments. Then she asked about Clara. Garrett spoke proudly about his daughter, her love of science, her dream of becoming an engineer, and the sacrifices required to keep that dream alive. He never complained. He simply described their life exactly as it was. Victoria quietly requested permission to visit the garage the following week. Garrett agreed, assuming she merely wished to thank him again. Several days later, multiple company vehicles arrived outside Holloway Auto Repair during the late morning. Garrett expected a business inspection. Instead, Victoria stepped out alongside several department managers. They spent nearly an hour watching Garrett work. They observed how he explained repairs honestly, showed customers damaged parts before replacing them, and occasionally reduced bills when families struggled financially. One elderly veteran left the garage wiping tears after Garrett secretly paid for his brake repair. Victoria noticed everything. After the final customer departed, she made Garrett an unexpected offer. Her company's maintenance division serviced hundreds of fleet vehicles every year. They had been searching for a reliable independent repair partner after repeated problems with larger contractors. She wanted Garrett's garage to handle a significant portion of their fleet maintenance. The contract would provide steady income for years. Garrett stood speechless. He asked why she would trust such an important responsibility to a tiny neighborhood garage. Victoria smiled gently. She explained that technical skills could be taught, but integrity could not. She would rather trust someone whose character had already been proven. The contract transformed Garrett's life almost overnight. He hired 2 unemployed mechanics from town. He expanded the garage. He purchased modern equipment. Bills that had haunted him for years finally disappeared. For the first time since Meredith's passing, Garrett slept through the night without worrying whether the electricity would remain connected. Clara noticed the change immediately. Her father smiled more often. They could afford fresh paint for their little house. They replaced the leaking roof before autumn rains arrived. Most importantly, Garrett was finally present emotionally instead of constantly overwhelmed by financial fear. Yet the greatest surprise still waited ahead. Months later, during a company appreciation event held on a sunny afternoon, Victoria invited Garrett to speak briefly about small businesses and community trust. He reluctantly accepted. Standing before hundreds of employees, Garrett admitted he never imagined fixing one radiator hose would change his life. Then he shared the lesson his wife had taught him before she passed away. She used to say that kindness was like repairing an engine. Sometimes one small adjustment prevented complete breakdown later. People worked the same way. One act of compassion could rescue someone from giving up entirely. The room fell silent. Many employees wiped away tears. After the event ended, Eleanor slowly approached Garrett with Clara walking beside him. The elderly woman embraced both father and daughter with genuine affection. She admitted something Garrett had never known. On the day her car broke down, she had been returning from a medical appointment where doctors had warned her that her health was beginning to decline. She had left the clinic feeling frightened and terribly alone. Garrett's simple refusal to accept payment had reminded her that goodness still existed, giving her hope during one of the darkest afternoons of her life. Garrett realized then that he had repaired far more than a broken radiator. He had unknowingly helped heal a discouraged heart. Inspired by everything that had happened, Victoria launched a community initiative encouraging local businesses to donate skills instead of only money. Mechanics repaired vehicles for struggling families, electricians helped elderly homeowners, plumbers assisted veterans, and carpenters restored homes damaged by neglect. The movement spread from one town to neighboring communities because people discovered that generosity often inspired even greater generosity. Garrett continued operating his garage exactly as before. His prices remained fair. His honesty never changed. Whenever customers thanked him for his success, he simply pointed toward the old workbench where the cracked radiator hose from Eleanor's sedan still rested inside a small display case. He kept it there as a reminder that every ordinary day carried the possibility of becoming extraordinary through one compassionate decision. Years later, Clara earned a scholarship to study engineering, fulfilling the dream she had shared with her father during countless afternoons inside the repair shop. Before leaving for college, she hugged Garrett tightly and thanked him for teaching her that success was never measured by the size of a paycheck but by the number of lives made brighter because someone chose kindness when it would have been easier to look away. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. What do you think is the greatest act of kindness someone has ever shown you, or what act of kindness has changed your own life? Leave a meaningful comment below because your story might inspire someone else who needs hope today. As Garrett locked the garage doors that warm afternoon, sunlight reflected across the freshly painted sign above the entrance. Customers waved as they drove past, children laughed from the nearby park, and Clara stood beside her father with pride shining in her eyes. Garrett understood that life would still bring challenges, but he no longer feared them. He had learned that kindness was never wasted, even when it seemed unnoticed. Sometimes the smallest act performed without expectation became the very reason another person found hope again. And sometimes, without realizing it, one free repair could mend broken hearts, restore forgotten dreams, unite strangers like family, and remind an entire community that compassion remains the strongest force any ordinary person can offer the world. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for being part of our community, where every story reminds us that kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives in ways we never expect.